Test. Okay. We are here and ready to go. And today I have the Silkwoods. Let me see. Jeff and Mary. Oh, good. I got them right. Okay. If I could only do that with my kids, get those names right. So we'll sit down, grab a mic, and we'll start with, well, take us back to the beginning. I'm not talking about creation, okay? What got you interested in missions? Oh, it is?
We can show this one. Okay. Do you want to take that one?
Okay. Yeah, you can share. I'll see if I can figure this out.
Hello. So we what got us into missions? I was born and raised in Thailand. That's where we work now. And so my parents were missionaries first, and I went back to the States as a adult. You just push a button?
Hello.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I was looking for something that said on. It didn't have that.
I'm used to that button, and that's why I'm a missionary. So, I grew up on the mission field. My parents were missionaries. My parents were Tom and Gail Silkwood, and so from very young, I always kind of had the idea that I was eventually going to end up back on the mission field. Didn't actually know as to what capacity I was going to be on the mission field. Left Thailand at 18, came back to the States, went into the U.S. Army, eventually ended up in Indianapolis, where I worked at Wood-Mizer for a bit. I don't know if anybody here knows of Wood-Mizer. Went back to the National Missionary Convention, which is what it was called back then, and that's where I met Mary. So I'll let you tell the story. You tell it better than I do.
My turn, I guess?
Your turn.
Yes.
Okay.
What's the story?
The story, yes. Okay, so I was born and raised in Wood River, Illinois, which is near St. Louis, Missouri. And I lived in the same house, went to the same church, same school my whole life. But at about 9, I went to church camp, and there were missionaries there, and that's when I decided to become a missionary. So fast forward to 18 years old, I went to Lincoln Christian College, and then I went to ICOM, and I met this guy who had really long hair and a beard. And I was hanging out with his sister, who was a friend of mine in school. And I introduced myself to him, and he said it was his birthday. And he was hanging out by himself, and I felt bad for him.
Was it really his birthday?
It was. I always celebrate my birthday at ICOM or the convention because it's the middle of November.
So then, didn't talk to him again until a year later. We went to ICOM again, Indianapolis?
No, Cincinnati.
Oh, Cincinnati. Then we were in Cincinnati. Went to ICOM again. I was with his sister another time sitting. He said it was his birthday again. And I told him, oh, I met your brother last year. He had really short hair, no beard. And he said, I don't have a brother. And I said, I know I met your brother. And he said, no, that was me. I cut my hair.
We were married 6 months later, and I told her, see, you always talk about men being shallow. And I said, I had long hair, and you didn't pay anything attention to me. I cut my hair, and then we got married. I said, see.
So we got married, and then he ended up joining me at school at Lincoln. And then another long story, we ended up graduating from St. Louis Christian College.
As it turns out, Lincoln's further away from St. Louis Christian College than where we lived near St. Louis. So we finally got smart and went there and graduated. Yeah. It was a great experience.
And then we had our oldest, Josiah, and then our second, Violet. And then we went to Thailand when they were 3 and 1.
At that time, we worked kind of as a multimedia thing. I created a solar kit for missionaries to be able to take this solar-powered television set into the jungle so that they could use multimedia tools to share the gospel. So once I got that done, we ended up going back to the States, Josiah had problems with, has epilepsy, but we hadn't figured that out. He was getting sick every 2 weeks with strep throat, and he'd have 5 to 10 seizures a day. And so we left the field for a couple of years just to get that figured out. I took a position preaching in Southern Illinois, which was a great learning experience. From there, we had Naomi.
Yep.
You want to finish those?
Then Naomi was born in Illinois. That's our third child. And then we went back to Thailand in 2018. I was pregnant with our fourth child, who was born about 3 months after we got back on the field. And so that was a long journey. He was born with major health problems. He had to have surgery when he was 2 weeks old. And praise God, he only had to have one surgery when he was supposed to have 3 surgeries. So we spent about 2 years in and out of the government hospital in Thailand until he was healed and healthy. And then
well, his condition was he was born without a functioning esophagus. So his esophagus is called esophageal atresia. A dead end in his throat, and then part of it grew into his trach. So every time he'd breathe, it'd go into his stomach. There's a huge story about that we realized that God was blessing us through that inconvenience, but we weren't wise enough to figure it out until later. But we can get into that story later if we need to. But after 3 weeks being in the hospital, he was finally let go to come back to the house. 3 weeks without a meal. We thought that was a record someplace, at least for a baby. So he had, IVs that give him all the nutrients that he needed. We learned a lot about the Thai government hospital system, and there's a lot of stories there.
Are those government hospitals recommended or not recommended?
It depends. The issue is, okay, how to say this in a way that will be enlightening and yet, and concise. If you have a death like a deadly illness or something, you can go there and they will prevent you from dying most of the time. In the big government hospital, like the main one in Chiang Mai City, their ability to be able to do surgeries and the doctors are really, really good. Their equipment is top notch. Their facilities looks like it was drug out of the cellar of like the Thai prisons. There's people on gurneys in the hallway. There was a whole field that when we were there, people that were laying on the sidewalks because they didn't have room for them inside the hospital. When we were there for another treatment for another thing, we actually saw that their cancer ward was right next to the ward with people with dysentery. And so you sit there and you go, that just doesn't seem to make much sense. However, technology-wise and capability-wise, the doctors were outstanding. The nursing staff was horrendous. If that paints a picture for you.
Okay. And I'll probably forget. So what is this God story with the esophagus? Because if I don't get back to it now, I'll forget.
Okay. Do you want to tell it? You had a whole different perspective of it than what I did. So, because you went through a lot more of it than me. I just stood there.
Oh, from the beginning?
From the beginning.
Okay.
Well, just from when he was going to be born.
Oh, okay. So I had a really wonderful Christian doctor in the city, and she was one of the only doctors who does natural births in Chiang Mai. And so every woman, if you've had a baby, and they check you for something called group B strep the last few weeks of your pregnancy. It goes away after you have the baby, but if you have this, you have to have antibiotics. You have to go into the hospital early so that you don't pass it on to the baby. Well, I didn't have it with the first 2 kids, but I had it with the third, so I had to go in and be put on an IV ahead of time. It's not the worst thing, it was just more of an inconvenience to me. And so I had a friend that just went through this. She didn't get the antibiotics, so then she had to go into the hospital every day because it passed to her baby. And I was thinking, that just seems like a lot to have to take a newborn baby back and forth to the hospital for a few days.
It should be known that driving to the hospital, Suandak Hospital in Chiang Mai, is not like driving to your local hospital here. For one, I would have to drop Mary off at the door and then drive down the street and park in a multi-story parking lot and then walk about a half mile or so back. So it all depending on what the condition was. With her being freshly delivered, it wasn't a very convenient way to be able to do things. It actually turned out to be a big problem later on. But yeah, the system for parking is not, it is an afterthought in Thailand. They don't look at it and say, oh, we'll have about 5,000 people a day going through here. Let's make sure we have room for parking. They just have room for people to walk through the door. So.
Yeah, so the doctor said I was positive for group B strep. I'd have to have the antibiotic. And how all my pregnancies have been, I go into early labor, but the baby's late. So always in labor like a month before, but baby's always like later. So the doctor kept saying, oh, the baby's going to come every week for a month. The baby's coming this week. And so finally, when the baby was about a week or two late, I don't remember.
About a week later, so.
Yeah, she said, I think you should go to the hospital because you really need the antibiotic. And so went into the hospital.
Well, we have to go back because with Violet, our second child, when she was born, I got married to the hospital, and within 20 minutes of getting to the hospital, Violet was born. She was actually born prior to the doctor being able to make it into the room. So we knew that whenever Mary actually got time to deliver, she went very quickly. And so I was prepared. I was given a kit. I had a shower curtain and gloves and clamps, and I was trained on how to do this. And I was excited because I thought, if this happens, I'm going to have a great newsletter to send back to the States. But I thought it would have been neat, but I was told that was not, it wasn't worth it. That was what she was told. So we made it to the hospital because we had to go early. When they induced her, the way that they do it in the States, if I remember correctly, is they put it in your IV bag and they slowly drip it, right? In Thailand, they come out with a big syringe and they just, and then Mary told the nurses, she said, you need to go and tell the doctor she needs to be here now. And they said, oh, don't worry, she'll be here soon. And Mary said, no, now. And they said, well, she's on her way. Well, she was downstairs on the first floor. We were on the 11th. She was in the elevator on the way up. And by the time she got to the 11th floor, Mary had already delivered the baby. I told her, I said, Mary just decided that you're not going to believe me. I'm going to prove you wrong. And all these nurses were standing against the wall with eyes this big going, and then something clicked and they realized, oh, we have to do our job.
So that's when there was one nurse there that was like in shock. The baby was like born, and then handed me the baby, and the doctor ran in at that time, and they couldn't get the Matthias is his name to like cough the phlegm. So they took the baby from me and said, oh, that's normal. Just take him to the nursery as extra phlegm. And then it was that time they put like a tube down his throat, but it wouldn't go down all the way because it physically wasn't there.
Yeah, so the esophagus pouched off and was a dead end. So the tube would go in and come back out. We have a picture of the x-ray where you can see the tube coming back out of his throat. And you can see that one lung is collapsed and his abdomen is swollen. And so as we were sitting there, I was really excited. This is the part where I all of a sudden realized just what God did. And the story about Matthias is great, but the story about what God is doing here was actually even more amazing to us than that. If anyone here has had kids, what's the first thing that you do after you have your baby? Usually they feed, right? Well, that was the first thing that I was told. If we had a car delivery, as soon as the baby is born, take the baby, give the baby to mom, let the baby feed. Well, the esophagus had dead end, and the esophagus went into the trach. If I had been in the car, Matthias would have drowned because he had to eat. And so I tell people, God gave Mary group B strep so he was born in a hospital. I said, praise God for those little inconveniences that sometimes you just don't see. And that's the story.
Well, thanks. And so you're there in Thailand. Now you've got family. What is your ministry there then? How is this going to all be working out for you and for you in taking care of young kids and ministry? And
you want me to? I don't care. You give me permission if
I made it open-ended, so you can just go anywhere you want with it.
Let's see,
Okay?
our style of ministry, I don't know if I'm not sure how common it is or how many times other people do it, but we had to get terms that people can understand. So we just say it's evangelism and discipleship. However, we do it as a family model. So our kids are very much involved with the ministry that we do. When I was growing up, my parents were missionaries, and we saw that there was a lot of missionaries that went off into their work, and some of the people that were in our mission would disappear. The fathers would disappear for 3 months at a time, going off into the jungle and leave their kids at home with mom. And a lot of those kids just struggled. I was one of them. My dad did a lot of work, but there was a time, especially my teenage years, where my dad was really focused on work, and he would leave before I was up in the morning, and he didn't get back until I was in bed. And so he was just kind of not there. And that didn't go on for very long. And I wouldn't say that my dad did anything necessarily wrong in the way that he was doing his ministry. It was kind of a difficult time. But we took those notes as to how we saw people doing ministry before and realized that we wanted our kids not only to look back and say, that's the work that my parents were doing, but they wanted to say, that's the work that we're doing. And so whenever we're doing the work that we do, it's pretty simple. It's nothing very hard. We just try to get to know people that are in our area, our neighbors. We try to talk to them. We've also done some work in some translation work with certain things. I'll talk more about that tomorrow morning. But mostly it's just living with people and allowing that as an opportunity to be able to talk and share the gospel with them. So having more kids is actually a really good way, because Thais don't have more than 1 or 2 kids. So if you have 5, they look at you like, oh, wow, look, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, yeah, we had number 5 in 2021. And like the COVID baby, so he was born, same hospital, different experience.
Whole different experience. Actually, I got to brag on Mary for a minute. In the middle of delivering Silas, he's our youngest one, she looked up, and she is everywhere she goes, this is what the Thais call her. Just so you know, she's little, but she's called Super Mom. And that's because she was in the middle of delivering, and in between contractions, she looked at one of the nurses and she goes, oh, you were here when my other son was born. How are you? And the lady goes, yes, I was. And so she has a conversation, and then she goes, just a moment. So everyone knows Mary as Super Mom. So, and she doesn't like that I say that in front of everybody else. She would have preferred not to be up on stage when I said it. But anyway, so the different things we have Bible studies that we conduct out of our house. Most of those have been with people that are new Christians, people that have came out of Buddhism or different worldviews, and we take the opportunity to be able to show them what the scriptures say and then how to apply it to their lives. And that's the basics part of it. It's not very complicated.
So Mary, is this missionary experience what you expected as you were looking at education and going on to the mission field?
No, I don't think so.
I'm taking out the birthing part of it.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think I imagined it like a lot different. Like, I don't know. I think I imagined like a dusty village or something, and we live more in a city.
The city that we lived in before in Chiang Mai is about, the whole province is about 1.6 million people. And in the city, if you count all the tourists that show up, it's probably, I don't know, there's a lot of people there. What is it, 1 million-ish? I'm looking at Dwayne. 1.2 if you consider, if not the city proper, if you look up the city, you'll say there are 130,000 people. But then there's all these little cities that it's grown into. So altogether, it's probably 1.2 million people. And so there's 2 of the shopping malls shut down during COVID, but then we still have 4 left over. And everything that we have we have modern grocery stores. You can live as nicely as you want to in Chiang Mai City. And so for people to have the idea of grass huts, dirt floors, and that kind of stuff, this is a total different experience. However, you can live that way as much as you want to. You know, they have whatever you want. You can live on the dirt floor just right next to the guy that has the multi-million-dollar mansion. It's up to you.
So how are your kids adjusting to this? Do they enjoy this experience?
I think they love it. So
In the Thai side.
yeah,
right?
they love Thailand. Now they love Lake James. So we actually moved, let's see, April 6th, and then 10 hours away from our home in Chiang Mai, and then we came to the U.S. April 18th. So roughly 10-ish days before we came to the U.S. after being there 5 years, we moved. So I was really concerned about the kids because Chiang Mai was their home. They were there 5 years. Some of the kids 6 years. That's all they've ever known. So, and I was mostly concerned about the older ones because they were the ones with friendships. But I think they were the most excited. And
Well, they were very excited about moving over because, as we told the kids, in Chiang Mai, and this is going off of stats off of an organization, their website is called TU Thai, which kind of gives you a rough estimate of how many Christians are in Thailand and how many churches and where they're at. And I would say it's mostly good information. So according to that, and this will get back to what the kids were thinking, because we've incorporated the kids in the conversations. They don't make the decisions, but they're part of the conversation. And so when we told them Chiang Mai has about 100,000 or so Christians in that place, or in the province, and about 1,000 different churches, according to this one resource. And then we looked up what it was in Udon, where we lived. And in Udon, there's 6 churches. And I would say that we have friends that have gone to those churches, and they haven't found one church that would actually be considered, maybe one that's kind of a church. The others are something different. And so the stats that I like to say is this. There's provinces in Thailand, and then there's areas of the country. And so there's the northwest, which is where Chiang Mai is, and then there's the northeast, which is called Isan. And Isan is made up of about 22 different provinces. And if you take all of the Christians that live in Isan, the 22 provinces that we know about, and compare it to just Chiang Mai city, there are half as many Christians in all the provinces of Isan compared to the one province of Chiang Mai. And so we looked at it and said, it's not that there's not work in Chiang Mai. There's plenty of work to be done there. But we would rather, I jokingly say, the reason we moved to Udon was because I wanted to be the best missionary in the province. And so I figured that if I can't get better at my trade, then I might as well just weed out everybody else.
So if you're the only one, then you consider yourself the best?
Well, I know there's at least, right, there's at least 3 others, so I'm at least in the top 3. So, but when we told the kids there's no real Christians, there's people that have never heard of the name of Jesus Christ, there's nobody that even knows who a Christian is, what do you think? And their response was, well, we need to go someplace where people don't know about Jesus. So they were on board. They're ready to go.
yeah, they kind of will walk around the neighborhood, and like I always wanted to live somewhere where we could just kind of walk to the market or something, and that never happened. But I think in our new city maybe more. But so we would like get out when it wasn't as much traffic where we were living and talk to the neighbors, and they would go to the little store, and we would pass a few shops we had never been to before, and they're always like, oh, come on, we can go in there. They don't know God. We can go tell them. So they're very good about like kind of pushing us even out of our comfort zone. So.
And so the biggest thing about the kids coming back to the States, well, they've been in Thailand for 5 years. Some of the youngest 2, this is the first time they've ever been in the country that they have citizenship in. And so specifically with our older kids, and not so much Josiah, he remembered the U.S., so he wasn't such a problem. But Violet and even Naomi, they did not want to come back here. And they said, we got to go back because that's your citizens there, your grandparents are there, you have family, we've got to visit our churches. And they said, we don't want to go, this is our home. And we don't want people to say, what's it like now that you're back home in the States? Because they said, the States isn't my home. And I said, well, think of it this way. You're going back there because you don't only have to do ministry to people in Thailand that don't know Jesus, but you need to do ministry towards people in the States that don't know about missions. And so you can share with them what your experience is and help them understand your life in Thailand better. And so their experience here at the camp, now they've determined that Lake James is their home. They own things. They have stock here. They don't know what that means. but they believe that they can do whatever they want. As you can probably tell by, well, the first day of School of Missions, we were frantically looking for Matthias. We couldn't find him. And we have been telling him for the entire time that we were here, because there wasn't a camp for his age. He was just a little bit too young. So we told him that School of Missions was his camp. And so he came running in here. We thought we saw him run into the chapel, but then we couldn't find him. So all the staff is scouring the property trying to figure out where this kid is. And then finally we find him. He's sitting in the second row up here. And I came up and I got him. I pulled him outside and I said, Matthias, what are you doing? He said, this is my cab and I'm sitting in the front. I said, okay. But yeah, so they're excited to be here. They are missing Thailand, but they're enjoying it while they're here.
It sounds like then that at least Matthias, we're going to see him back here at the School of Missions some other time.
He's gonna remember that spot too.
So now in this new area, did you get your thatch roof and dirt floors? And do you have a place big enough to do ministry? And how is that going to work?
We have no dirt floors, sadly enough. We have plenty of dirt. It's just on the outside of the house. The house is big, and we got it for quite a good price. We actually found the house a couple years before we ever decided to move to Udon. We saw the house and toured around it. It was a disaster. We asked the guy how much it was. He gave us a price, and it was well over double what we could afford. And so we thought, we'll just keep it on the back burner because we're not even really in the place where we can make a decision to move to this city. We had visited numerous other provinces that we would have preferred to go to, but ended up in Udon. Went back because we had friends that said that they were going to watch our dogs in Udon. So we went back over and tried to get a hold of the landlord at that place. And so he said, well, yeah, it's still available. I looked at it. It was in worse condition, which was great because when you get to see a house in really poor shape, you have more bargaining power. And so I talked to him and I said, well, what do you want to rent it for? And he said, well, and he gave me one price. And I said, well, I would really like this price instead. And he goes, well, how long are you going to be here? And I said, well, we'll probably be here for a while. We're pretty used to Thailand. He goes, okay. So he cut the price in half as to what we were going to get it for. But it has a lot of problems with it. The air conditioners are bad. When you turn two air conditioners on at the same time, they fight. And then one wins and the other one runs away and hides for a while. It was about 2 days before it would turn back on. Water problems. There's no place to be able to hook up a washing machine. So I had to quickly shoot some stuff together, make it so our washing machine could run. The showers don't work.
Well, it's like they like to put a bathroom in every room. So we have
we are like a hotel system. We have a bathroom in every bedroom, and then some in places that we don't even know
but
about.
Only so all of them don't. None of the hot water works in any of the bathrooms except for one. And then that one shower, it's not a full shower. It's like but in that one bathroom, the toilet doesn't work. So we're like, don't use the toilet, kids, in that bathroom, just the shower. You have to, and it's this big house looks like a rainbow. So they have to run from one end to the other to use the bathroom. So it'll be interesting.
There are shortcuts. You can run. Well, it's like a horseshoe, so you can go through it. But so it's going to take a lot of work to get it up and running. But the good things about it, now that's that part. The good thing is that it's a very large house. Mm-hmm. It has a front room that's detached that we can potentially use as an office, and that's useful to be able to get visas. You have to have an office, and we can use that as an office potentially in the future if that turns out it works out. We have a dining room that's huge, and it would work really well as a fellowship hall. And so we can use that for that. There's 2 living rooms, so we can actually host things and we can bring people in.
It's big enough if we wanted to have a home church there, which is what we hope to do. So
yeah, so we have enough room that we can actually put in the dining room. We could probably put 30 people without too much of a problem. So we looked at it, we thought most of our ministry style works around the family unit. It works around the home. So we needed to make sure we had a house that we could facilitate that without having to go someplace else. So, and we got it. We just have to fix it.
So when you get back, you're going to have to work on a house and work on spreading the gospel. How are you going to balance those two?
I'm going to do it at the same time by having people come and help me and then share the gospel while they're doing it. And since I'm paying them, they can't run away.
Unless you pay them first. I suggest you wait till the end.
Right. I had a friend that was he's like a chiropractor, but I grew up with him. His name's Ben. He's half Thai, half from the UK. And he's not a Christian. He's Buddhist. And I would go and get adjusted by him, and I'd talk theology and different things about the gospel as I was going. He said, "Why do you do this?" I said, "Because I pay you, and you're not going to kick me out till it's done. I have the whole half hour, and you can't run away." And he said, "Fair enough. I guess you can talk about what you want." I said, "That's right. That's what I can do." So,
okay. Are there any questions from the audience?
Yeah, we homeschool them.
That's what I think about it. So do you know if there are lots of kids in your neighborhood?
I'm not sure about the neighborhood, but we do have one friend, like another family that we'll be working with in the city, and they have 3 children as well.
well, we do have the neighbors that we've already started to talk to that are on each side of us. There's walls that go all the way around the property. And so on one side, we talk to that neighbor, and then the other side, we talk to that neighbor. And this guy came over, he goes, "Oh, my sister has kids about their age. Can they come over and play?" And we said, "No, we don't want them." And I said, "No, absolutely, bring them over." Because that's the one thing about having little kids is in Thailand, they count you like ducks, you know. I like to tell them, they don't see one of our kids, and they go, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I go, "No, 5. And I have this fake panic, like, "Where's the 5th one?" And then, yeah, they don't know how to handle it either. But there's one number one prayer need. Well, actually, right now, there's some complication with the visa. There's 2 things. Since I was born in Thailand, I qualify for citizenship. However, the system in Thailand switched. It should take 2 years to get it. It's been 5. So all of it's in. My paperwork is sitting on the desk of the minister's office that can sign off on it and just say it's done. If that's done, then I don't have to get a visa. I can give citizenship to my kids. Mary will have a different kind of visa she can stay there indefinitely, and we can buy property that we could use for ministry later. So really citizenship, and then if that doesn't go through, we still have to have a visa. And right now we have one system of visa, but we really need to switch it to another. And so we're looking for possibilities for that switch. We have lifeboats that we can jump into to make sure we stay in the country, but we're looking for a more stable system. So that's the primary one.
Okay, yes. They used to have just little like hardware stores everywhere. Now they're starting to be kind of outdone by the larger ones. They have a place called Global House, which is like Home Depot. We have Home Pro, which is like the nicer version of that. They have a whole bunch of them. They're everywhere. Houses in Thailand don't last as long as what they do in the States. If you have a house from the 50s, it's usually a wooden house, and they're quickly tearing all of those down and rebuilding them into concrete houses. So many times people will, rather than redoing an older home, unless it's so ancient they want to make it into a museum, but if they don't do that, they just tear it down and build new. And there's tons of building projects everywhere as people are moving over from overseas. So building stuff, however, the quality of that stuff, you have to be careful. So, yeah, they use PVC and everything else and stuff. So,
are there minority languages?
Many. The last I knew that we have Central Thai, and that's what I speak and what Mary speaks. In the north, they have Pasammuang, which is the northern dialect. In the east, they have their own dialect, and that's not including the hill tribe languages like Lisu, Lahu, Rawang, Akha, Hmong and stuff like that. Those are all different too. Last I knew, there was about 70 different indigenous languages that were there, which is why Pioneer and other Bible translation organizations have had such a footprint, because they can get into not only the Thailand, but also into Myanmar and other places. So lots of languages. If you can know one of them that somebody else knows, then you can still have conversations. But
Okay, and anything else? Yeah.
What percentage of funding are you at?
we have most of our funding right now. Well, I guess you could say we have enough funding that we're functioning. We don't have enough funding to keep going and do. There are a few projects that we have that we'd like to further, but I would say right now we're about 90, 95%. However, we'd like to be able to expand our budget by another, I think, honestly, another $1,000 a month before we could do everything that we have in mind. So,
Yes.
that was actually one of the things that it was on our checklist, because our oldest son is epileptic and our other one has this narrow esophagus that makes him sound like a whistle. And so we want to make sure we have something there. Wudong actually has the same hospital as Chiang Mai. It's a private hospital that does really good. It's called Bangkok Hospital, and they put a Bangkok Hospital in all of the major cities. And so although the city that we moved to is not nearly as touristy, the city population is still pretty high. It's around 110, 120,000 people. And so they have plenty of medical facilities that are there. We just haven't found, that's one of the things. Daily operations overseas move much slower than what they do in the States. So finding a doctor that you actually would trust your kids with, or a grocery store that you're not going to get sick from, or just how you're going to process and do daily life takes a little bit longer to figure out.
Well, we'll have a friend told me there's 3 big hospitals in the city, maybe 4, and different expats and missionaries have tried out a few. So when you try one out, then everybody gives recommendations for different doctors. So we found a few there. Thankfully, we haven't had to go to any yet. But for our son's neurologist, we'll fly back twice a year, drive back, and so we can continue to see her, because it's not emergency, just ongoing
Well, she's
care.
also rated as one of the best, one of the top 2 pediatric neurologists in the country. And so we figured that for her level of experience and care, it's worth taking a short trip back to Chiang Mai twice a year. So.
Well, we just heard the bell, so we'll close up here so we can get to the next.
Oh, we have a booth back there. We don't have much.
This has our camp picture because we didn't have a name on it. So
yeah, and we're normally prepared. You just have to trust us. But if you see a thing with a whole bunch of bugs on it in that corner, that's our table. So.
Okay. Well, thank you for being up here. And it'll take us a few minutes, and then we'll be ready for the 11 o'clock.
Thank you very much.